Hello and welcome to this episode. Today I am going to be breaking down the guidance I brought through in November. And I love to do these episodes after I've channeled in Pure Channel so that I can just speak to what I've personally taken from the channel guidance. And also, I love to layer on some of my own perspectives, just add a different flavor to it. Because sometimes what I experience is when I bring through that information is so beautiful and it's channeled with such purity. Sometimes it can feel a bit confusing as to how to actually use that practically in your day-to-day life. So this episode is about decoding the message that I brought through in November. If you want to watch the full Pure channel, it will be linked here below. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my top 5 quotes that I think are really powerful from what I brought through in the November channel, and we're going to break them down together and just really understand what the Arcturian Council really meant when they brought this information through. So let's get started. So first of all, the first quote I want to speak to is basically this quote around this collective awakening process that they were talking about in their channeled guidance. So what the Arcturian Council actually said was, this is their words exactly, what feels like possibly chaos, what feels like a falling, a crumbling, a breaking down is the emergence of a new transformational way of being that is evolving and emerging and birthing here now at this time. So when I listened to that, that felt quite exciting because I don't know about you, but there does feel like there's wild chaos. It's like the Wild West out there. And if you do tune into the news or tune into anything going on in the external world, I think we can all agree that it feels pretty volatile. There feels like a lot of movement. When they say about the crumbling and the falling away, I think we can really even see that even from people in positions of power, kind of falling from grace, or these things emerging like truth coming out. This is really prevalent everywhere. And I suppose when you just look at it on the face of it, it feels like just madness, really. What is going on? But if you actually then listen to what the guidance says, this is necessary, and you ground into that and you think, well, actually, it's true. How can we bring forward something new if we're still operating in the previous ways of living, the previous cycles, the previous paradigm, if you want to call it that? That's the thing. I think I want to layer onto this now is like, if you can ever go back to your own personal experiences where something in your life may have kind of dramatically fallen away or changed, or something has emerged and it has felt really tough at the time, and like no one's taking that away, like no one's saying that this is an easy process, and I don't think that that's what the Actuarian Council was trying to say, but I think what they are saying is, even though it might feel challenging, it can be necessary to move through. And I think, in my own life, if I reflect on that, there's been times where I've experienced a dramatic change, but it's put me on a totally different path, and it's actually been better. So I couldn't create what I was looking for, a new life that I was, in my heart desiring, because if I'd stayed where I was, if I continue on that cycle, you can't really innovate from that place. You can't create something new from that place. You've got to let something go to bring something new forwards. And I suppose we can understand that from an individual level, but also we're seeing that playing out on a collective level, which is pretty cool. But at the same time, not easy. It can feel challenging. And I definitely find it challenging as well, because being somebody who is so connected, I can feel the energetics of that. Like, I can feel the energy of the world, feeling that tension, that pressure point, and sometimes it can feel quite heavy. So I guess my tip for that is just coming back to yourself, really. And it always comes back to that, doesn't it? It always comes back to that. But, remembering that this process is birthing something new, that when we're seeing things falling away, which can feel scary, which can feel uncomfortable, can maybe feel like we don't know what's coming the other side. And it's that unknown, isn't it, that feels really sometimes quite scary to think about. But if we can ground into this message, which is, this is the breaking down, is the emergence of a new transformational way of being that is evolving and emerging and birthing here now at this time. Like, that's awesome. So, you know, I might actually really put that somewhere to remind me in these moments that actually, whilst it feels challenging, this is it. You know, we are really right in the thick of this evolution process and this transformational process. And that leads me perfectly into the second one, because, and when I listened to this back, it took me a bit by surprise, because so for anyone that doesn't know me or hasn't experienced channeling or my channeling, when I'm in channel, of course I'm like present because I'm obviously here, but I'm sort of, I would say, like, I describe it as like I'm dropped back a bit. So I'm allowing them to speak through me. So I sometimes hear some pieces of information, but I mostly don't remember what I've said. And so I have to go back and listen to it the same way that you are listening to it now, or maybe you have listened to it. So what's always blows my mind is what I take from it afterwards. And it did feel like, when I was pushing, you know, publish to put this out, it did feel a little bit uncomfortable, this one, because there were some big statements in here that felt pretty significant. And this one was about this solstice period. So it's about the winter solstice and its significance. So they speak about, so this is their words: we are leading up to what is called here winter solstice, or December timeline, of a pivotal moment where the veil becomes even thinner and the opportunities for your evolution are unfolding. I wish I could tell you what that means. I wish I knew on a detailed level what that really means. But I think it just gives us something really tangible to understand that as we move into 2026 and that last month of this year being so significant, the veil being thinner, you know, mass awakenings, I think they speak about that. Something significant is changing. But, and I do remember this from the conversation from what was brought through, they did specifically say, don't expect it to wake up overnight and it be a transformation like that. You know, what I think is important to ground into is that every day, the little things that create the incremental change. And I think that's really important to say. So whilst they're speaking about December, I think sometimes, and I see this also on the internet, where people kind of make these claims about a certain date or a certain portal or something that's going to change your life. Yes, but these are incremental incremental steps on your journey. And so I think collectively there is an opportunity for us to all lean into this new timeline that we're going into on Earth and really ground into the possibility of that. You know, and then linking that to the kind of chaotic experiences that we're experiencing, you know, knowing that it's for a greater purpose, because something new is being born, and we're going to see that as we go into 2026, of course. So, you know, I don't know if anybody as well is already feeling this energetic shift, this kind of thinning of the veil, because for me, even this month has been significant. The connections feel much more fluid. Because I experience galactic connections as well. Usually my connections go quite high up, like I'm connecting, you know, to source and to really high dimensional beings. I'm not really someone that connects a lot with kind of loved ones in that kind of other. Sometimes it feels like a separate realm to me. I don't know if that's true, but when I connect there, it's not usually so easy. I seem to go really high. However, this last month, I've been getting all kinds of connections, vision seeing, seeing spirit, and just the communication with, you know, with the universe, with my guides, with loved ones being just so much easier to access, which is actually a really beautiful thing. And I imagine that's not just happening to me. So, you know, if all of us who already have these awareness of other realms and the fact that we are more than just this human body, then that's beautiful. But if we start to, you know, if others who are just exploring this for the first time, or have maybe never considered it, start to have an experience that's undeniable, that for me feels awesome. And I think we're going to see more of that going into the end of this year and into next year for sure. So that was number 2. Number 3 is around individual sovereignty. So I'm going to read it. Only from breakdown can we experience breakthrough. And only when we see old paradigms move away can new be born. This is like we would call the womb of humanity. You are in the birth canal. Wow, that's beautiful. So, being in the birth canal, I mean, it feels like it, doesn't it? You know, if anyone here is familiar with that void process that I've definitely been through many, many times, and I'm just coming out the other side of one of them at the moment. Maybe I'm still there. I don't know. On a personal level, it's that point where you're in this like cocoon ready to come out the other side. And actually, when you're in that part, if you think about it, and this is going back to your personal life again, if you really think about how that feels, it feels like almost like a nothingness. It almost feels like you're not moving back or forwards. It's almost like a stillness. It's a moment of reflection, pause, take a deep breath. And I suppose we could link that to this solstice period where there is that sense of coming back to yourself. And if you can kind of get away from the chaos of, of the Christmas shenanigans, you know, it is a beautiful time for that reflection, that wintering. So as humanity, as a collective, we're experiencing that kind of, right, we're not in the new world. That's not fully born yet. We've got little, what I would say, pockets, beautiful green shoots emerging, but the old isn't really present fully anymore either. So we're between, we're in this classic void space. And I love the analogy of the birth canal because it's so true if you think about it. You know, that moment as well, if anyone here has given birth, when you're about to give birth physically, there is that moment right before your baby comes into the world that you think, nah, I'm out on this. I'm out. I'm going. No, it's got too much. It's too much. I'm out. And I think we're kind of in that, or with the way this is going, this transformation. It's like it feels actually quite on the edge because there's so much change happening. But we just got to allow that situation to come through. And it is a surrendering. If we think about it from that birth perspective, it is a surrendering and allowing it to just take place, you know, to be in the process, to allow the new to be born and not being fearful of that change, really knowing that we have to experience change. That has got to be, you know, that is the only outcome, because if we do want to live on an earth that is much more evolved, we want to live in a way that is much more connected and, you know, much more grounded in truth, you know, and community and all of those things. And the way we live currently cannot continue. You know, I'm not saying we have to rip everything up, but there's a lot of things that need to be looked at, you know, and this is the beauty of it. And if you are a light worker and you're bringing your work to, you know, and you're going out there and you're bringing your work to the masses, this is an incredible moment to be doing that. You need so much of that work. But if you are a light worker in what I'd call like more of an undercover space, so you're a light worker in the corporate world, if you're in the health system, if you're in these kind of institutions, your role in this is phenomenal as well. You know, we can see a lot of these systems are starting to break down, and that's not a personal perspective. That is true. You know, I live here in the UK. In the UK, our health system is not doing particularly well. You know, our schooling system is busting at the seams. These old school systems, these old paradigm ways of being are being pressure tested. And so things are going to it's going to become more apparent they're not working, but that's beautiful because there'll be more openness to creating the change. So that's what we have to lean into. And my guides say this all the time. Just anchor into the new, anchor into the change. If you're feeling like it's getting too much, find the pockets of the green shoots and focus on that. Focus on peace. If you're seeing war around you, focus on, you know, the incredible things that are happening in your local community. If it feels a lot too broad, so it's not about not looking at the dark situation, it's seeing it. If you can make some difference in it and that's your path, amazing. But if, you know, we can't take on every single thing that is going on, so just really being anchored in what is, you know, what am I taking action on, and where am I just going to ground into the possibility of the new, or ground into where I am seeing those green shoots, where am I going to ground into the amazing transformation that we're about to witness, and we're already witnessing, by the way. It's not just going to happen in December, it's already happening. It's going to continue all the way through into the end of the year, and then we're going to see that, I'm really excited for 2026. I think it's going to be transformational as a year in general, but what comes before the transformation often feels quite uncomfortable, so it's really just embracing that. So that was number 3. Number 4 is about this exposure and transformation in terms of mass awakening. So I kind of touched on this before when we were speaking about the winter solstice and the veil being thinner. But what they said is this. So they said, you're going to see a mass awakening, an awakening on a scale that is unprecedented. And that is what is coming at this present time. It begins now and it heightens through the solstice period. So aligned to the solstice period. So I think, speaking about this one, I think this is like, maybe you guys can relate to this. I've definitely been seeing this. There are people in my world that are now asking me questions about the things that I share that perhaps I wouldn't have believed would be interested in that. People in my immediate family awakening, understanding that there is something bigger, asking questions about experiences that they have had that becoming undeniable. And that's not just through the exposure to what I talk about. It's personal transformation that is happening on personal access to higher realms. And it's beginning to make those who perhaps would have not wanted to believe there is something bigger question if it's possible. Some things are happening that there is no alternative explanation for. And there is just a general awareness that perhaps there might be a different way. And I think, what I'm seeing, and I'd love to know, if you guys are listening to this and you are experiencing this, I'd love to know what you're seeing. For me, it's things like people are, in my world specifically, people are waking up to not feeling joy in the work that they're doing. Understanding that perhaps they might feel trapped in a job, for example, and making a different choice. That's part of an awakening experience. Some people asking me questions because they might have experienced a sign, which they maybe would have dismissed previously. Just stuff like that. And I think, if you are further, I don't believe that anyone's further along or more evolved. I just think that is, not helpful language. But some of us have got awareness of this already. And there is going to be a lot of people who are only accessing this or exploring it for the first time. And I think it's really, really important to have genuine openness, embrace the curiosity with boundaries, because, it's not about arguing one way or another, but it is about, really fostering that curiosity in others and being that, what my guides talk about, being the light and the beacon and showing the way and, sharing your experiences. And this is the whole point of why I'm doing these episodes, is sharing the experience of how it's transformed your life. Quite frankly, my life before now, it feels like a past life, before I woke up, because I was operating so unconsciously. It was like I was just going through the motions of life. Now, okay, I think the myth, and I talk about this a lot, the myth is that when you awaken and you start to understand something greater than yourself, all your problems, all your challenges are absolved. That's not true. But you have a different way of seeing them. You have a different way of experiencing those challenges because you recognize there is something to be learned from them, or that whatever your experience might be leading you to something else, and it's that openness, that curiosity, and the ability to see beyond just the present moment to a greater reason, a greater purpose for being here. And that's really, really powerful and really helpful. And it actually helped me as well not to take life so seriously in a way, because I used to feel so stressed sometimes. And so, I used to feel like I wasn't achieving enough or doing enough or wasn't this, that, and the other. And it actually just let me exhale. And I really, really hope that as this thinning of the veil is going on, more awakenings are occurring, more people are starting to be curious about what is out there, what's possible for themselves, and actually come back to themselves and start operating more from their truth, their heart center. This is going to be super powerful. It's going to be super powerful because ultimately, you know, my guides say this: the transformation doesn't happen like we wake up on a new earth, but the transformation happens when we come together. So each one lighting up, each one coming back, each one of us, and each one of us holding each other in this process is a beautiful thing. So I guess my kind of point here is have compassion for those that are on the earlier part of the journey, but also, you know, it is our role, if we are already, we've learned some things along the way, to support, to hold those that are feeling uncomfortable in this, because it can feel uncomfortable, and showing that this process, this period of transformation, is actually for a wider purpose. So the final one I want to speak about, and it links very much to what I've just said, is your personal power in this collective shift. So the quote from the Arcturian Council is: each day that you choose to stand in your sovereignty, you create a better world for all. Your individual role in this is enormous. Each one of you who step into your light more profoundly are creating an incredible ripple effect. And that one really landed with me when I listened to it. And I definitely have heard them say this before, but it's really landed with me because really we forget when we have a conversation, we maybe validate someone's experience, or we can be the stability in a chaotic scenario because, you know, we're practiced at understanding how to come back to ourselves when there's all this other stuff going on. When we can treat someone with compassion, care, or without judgment, those things alone are massively powerful. And sometimes I think we are, and this is a conditioning again, to think our purpose has to be some great big headline. Now, wow, if it is, great. And some, you know, and it would be beautiful if we all had a very, very wide and clear purpose. But sometimes it takes a while to work out what that is. And that's the process of being here. It's the whole point. So don't forget that just by being here alone is actually very powerful. And if you can embody what it is you understand and embody your spirituality more deeply, you're having a massive effect on every single person you meet. Whether that's somebody you meet, you know, just in the supermarket in the queue and you interact with in a beautiful, positive way, or whether that is, you know, speaking on a YouTube video, or, you know, speaking, doing a talk, or the way you behave, or the way you're, or the work that you do in the world. You know, it doesn't matter what that is. The impact is significant. And don't forget the small aspects of that. You know, in all of this, the whole point is to come back together. We have lost our ability to connect to each other, you know, and that's become more difficult over time because of the way that we live. We're more segregated in our experiences. So the more we can just be that light, the better. And that, if you're feeling like, I know I'm here to, I think often if you're a starseed, or you have open to a bigger purpose, or a wider understanding of this experience, you can feel sometimes, and I relate to this, that you've got to be doing more, there's more to be done, or there's this sense of urgency that I'm here to do something. Well, reminding yourself, actually, by being you, by being authentic, by going about your day in a way that is really conscious and you treat people with respect, alone you're having an impact. You know, going back to what they say, each one of you who step into your light more profoundly are creating an incredible ripple effect. And your individual role in that is enormous. Don't forget, it doesn't have to be grand gestures. It can just be the day to day. So that's where I'm going to leave it today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'd love to know what you take from it, if you can relate to any of the experiences that I've shared, or if you want to share with me. I would absolutely love to hear your own experiences in terms of how those statements are impacting you. If you haven't already watched the video, I would love it if you go over onto the other video and check it out. I'd love to know how you experience it. It was a very powerful channel, and yeah, it wasn't a long channel, but it was very powerful. So I hope if you do go over there, you enjoy it. And thank you for being here. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I will see you on the next one.